In this module, we continued our discussion of the validation concept in general and how it relates to domain-driven design. You saw how to combine fluent validation with the value object pattern, such that we comply with the second guideline of the good validation technique, keeping validation rules in the domain layer. At the same time, we're still getting the benefits of the fluent validation library, namely the declarativeness of the validation rules and automated invocation of those rules that don't clutter the controller. We discussed the third and the final building block of the proper validation technique, called validation is parsing. The idea behind it is that we cannot separate the two actions, object creation and its validation. We have to perform them together. Parsing is what our factory methods do. They take the input string, do some validations, then transform that string, then apply further validations, and so on and so forth. This is the one-way process, where each step depends on the previous step and cannot be skipped. Parsers allow you to preserve the information about the transformation process as you do the validation, so that you don't have to apply the same transformations twice. You should think of all your validators as parsers. This rule is applicable only when the operation requires both validation and transformation, like in the example with the email object creation. If we only need validation or only transformation, then we don't need to adhere to this guideline. We discussed that you don't have to create value objects for each property. The rule of thumb here is whether the property has more than one invariant, such as the maximum string length. If there are at least two invariants, for example, the maximum string length and a regular expression check, then you should introduce a separate value object for that concept. Otherwise, you can keep the primitive type. Finally, we talked about validation that uses data from the database. It's important to keep your domain model pure and not allow it to access the database directly. Instead, inject the data you query from the database as an argument into the value object's factory method. In the next module, we will talk about how to explicitly define errors in your application. We will also discuss more complex validations and take a look at the so-called DDD trilemma.